Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. My name is Jamie Clark, Timmins Construction Association President and the CEO of Tisdale Mechanical Contracting. I'd like to welcome you to our session on city land sales from the Business Building Permit Series, hosted in partnership with the Chamber. Please join me in taking a moment to reflect and recognize that we find ourselves on the lands of Matagami First Nation in the Treaty 9 territory. As we gather here today to discuss land sales and development, let us remember the importance of collaboration and respect for Indigenous communities. By working together with Indigenous communities, we can ensure that our projects are sustainable, inclusive, and contribute to the overall well-being of the region. I'd like to welcome our presenters today from the City of Timmins, Dave Landers, the Chief Administrative Officer, and Natalie Moore, Director of Finance and Treasurer, who will be discussing the city's land and tax process. Understanding the city's land and tax sale process can provide valuable opportunities to our members to expand their operations, develop new projects, and contribute to the growth of our community. There will be an opportunity to ask questions. Please raise your hand or submit your questions in the chat box. We kindly ask that you remain muted until called upon during the Q&A portion of the session. This session is being recorded and will be available on the Chamber's YouTube channel. I'll now invite Dave and Natalie to provide welcome remarks and discuss the process.
All right, thanks, Jamie. And thank you to the Chamber members who are attending today and those who will be watching this online afterwards. Natalie and I will run through a brief presentation and at a high level talk about tax sales and city land sale processes. I don't think that we'll cover every question that people will have, so we'll take some notes, and if there's further follow-up we need to do, we'll certainly get back to the group. But look forward to the conversation, and Natalie's going to start us off.
Okay, thanks. So if we could just put the presentation up to the overview slide. Perfect. So the overview for today's presentation is on this slide, and we're going to start by reviewing the tax registration and the tax sale process. Then we're going to review the Section 106 of the Municipal Act that addresses bonusing. We'll then look at city land sale process, and then we have some other items to discuss as well. So you could change the next slide. So for tax registration, so this is a highly legislated process, and it has several different steps. But for today's presentation, we've kept it really high level. So after a tax account has been in arrears for 2 full years, it is eligible for tax registration. And what tax registration is really is a municipality's ability to put a priority lien on a property. So the property has to be tax registered for a full year. So this gives the property owner an additional 12 months to pay the balance owing. So important to note at this time that the balance owing has to be paid in full once a property is tax registered. So we cannot accept partial payments in the year that the property is tax registered. If after a year the balance owing is still not paid, we can start advertising the property for tax sale. It has to be advertised for 6 consecutive weeks in the Ontario Gazette and in the local paper. Another important item to note here is at this point, the municipality does not own the property that's up for tax sale. It is still owned by the current property owner who unfortunately is delinquent in their taxes. So I think there's a common misconception out there that when we put up a property for tax sale that the city owns it. So I just want to make sure we were clear on that we do not own it. So you can change the slide, yeah. So now we get into the tax sale process. So the tax sale is held after 6 weeks of advertising, like I'd mentioned. Properties with successful bids at that time are transferred directly to the successful bidder, so the new owner. So from the delinquent owner to the new owner. And then properties with no bids or rejected bids remain in the current property owner's name. So really that's just a failed tax sale. Nothing changes. It stays in the property owner's name. At that point, the city now has 3 options that it can how to proceed. So it could re-advertise the property for sale at the same minimum bid. And I should state that the minimum bid on a tax sale is the amount outstanding on the tax account. The second option is it can write down or write off the taxes and re-advertise the property for sale at the lower minimum bid. This has to go to council for approval as well. And the last option is it can vest the property. So what that means is we then transfer the ownership from the current property owner to the city. Once we vest the property, we now own it. And that's when we follow our own city land sale bylaw, which Dave is going to walk you through in just a minute. But before we get to that, I just thought it was important to go through the bonusing clause in the Municipal Act. So for this slide, I'm just going to ask that you not shoot the messenger, because this is, I think, why we're here today. So I'll just read this one. So despite any act, a municipality shall not assist directly or indirectly any manufacturing business or industrial or commercial enterprise through the granting of bonuses for that purpose. Without limiting subsection 1, the municipality shall not grant assistance by giving or lending any property of the municipality, including money, guaranteeing borrowing, leasing or selling any property of the municipality at below fair market value, which is, I believe, why we're all here today. Or the last one, giving a total or partial exemption from any levy, charges, or fee. So this is word for word from the Municipal Act. I just thought it was important that we go through that. Now I'll pass it to Dave, who's going to walk you through the city tax sale process, and then a few other items that we're going to discuss.
All right, thanks, Natalie. So the city land sale bylaw so there's 2 ways that the city has land. Either we've historically owned it, or it's come to us through a tax sale. So, recently we had, a property out in Porcupine, which was an old fire hall, and then we go through a land sale process the same way as if we end up vesting a property, as Natalie just spoke about. So when it does become city owned, there is a specific set of activities or actions that we have to take, and I'll just walk you through that. So once the title is transferred to the City of Timmins, we have to follow the bylaw related to land sales. That bylaw was recently updated, but I mean, it's historically been much the same over time. So the first step is that council has to declare the land surplus to the municipality. So we bring in a resolution which council would approve, which would declare the land surplus. The second step is that fair market value has to be established to the land through various options. So and there's different ways of doing it. So we'll get an appraisal on a property. We will use whatever the latest assessed value is, if that's fairly current. Sometimes the assessed value is readily available, in which case we wouldn't have to go to an appraisal. But often the properties that we get or hasn't had an appraisal in many years. So then we have to reach out to an appraiser for that purpose. Or if it's, as you're aware, city owns lots of little small chunks of property. It used to be old laneways, things like that. We do have an evaluation that's been put together with the help of professional appraisers on what those property values are supposed to be, and we work through that sort of chart of costs associated with pieces of land that isn't, that you wouldn't consider a full residential lot or anything like that. But in any event, fair market value has to be established. So then the third step that we would go through would be that the surplus land has to be disposed of in one of 3 ways. So at this point, council's already declared the land surplus. We've already established what the value of the property should be. And then we go to either a request for proposal, we go through a public tender, or a direct sale. So recently with the old Whitney Fire Hall, we did a request for proposal. We were interested in finding out what people might be able to, wood bidders might want to do with that sort of property, and how it could, effectively be used, either, from a business development point of view, or from a, add housing into the community point of view. Or another option is the public tender process. So again, we put a tender out there, and we get the highest compliant bid for a process similar to what we did when a couple of properties at Melview Park went up for the city declared 2 pieces of land, which used to be part of Melview Park in South Porcupine. Sorry, I think that, or it might be Porcupine, my apologies. And then we took the highest bidder that's compliant gets it. The third option is a direct sale. So sometimes the city owns land that's attached to some, that might be landlocked, that we've ended up getting back as a result of tax failure, tax sales, or whatnot. Or there's a small piece of land, like a bit of a laneway that we've closed up, and we could do a direct sale to the abutting property owner. So that would happen in those sorts of those sorts of situations. So if we go to RFP, or a public tender, there's an evaluation of a purchase, and it does come back to council for approval in a open public meeting. There's a 2-week public notice that's required for public input on all land sales. So council can't declare a piece of property, a piece of land surplus, and the next day sell it directly to the abutting property owner, or close a 1-day tender. We just can't do that, not legally, and so that doesn't occur. And of course, everything goes back to council for final approval. Can we move to the next slide? So other items to note there, I think that the sort of genesis of this meeting, or one of the issues that led to this, came from the city doing direct transfer of property to the Cochrane District Social Services Administration Board. And, people saying, well, questions coming up of, why couldn't they have just handed it over to the private market, or something else like that. So the properties that we did deal with recently with the DSAB were properties that had been failed tax sales, and the city ended up writing off and they'd failed as a tax sale on multiple occasions, and so we were never going to get market value for those properties. The Cochrane DSAB is the municipal service manager for housing and homelessness in the City of Timmins and the District of Cochrane. So what that means is that the City of Timmins doesn't have a housing department itself, like the City of Sudbury does. In Cochrane District, the government created the DSAB with that responsibility, and they do it on behalf of all of the municipalities from here to Moosonee, as opposed to what you'd see in the city of Greater Sudbury, where they would take care of it themselves. So if the city wanted to build housing of its own, we don't have the mechanism for that. So that's why we end up using the Cochrane DSAB to do that sort of work on our behalf. So we had these properties, transferred it over to the DSAB. This was in compliance with the recommendations from the Housing Task Force, and the establishment or creation of additional affordable housing was approved in the city council priorities report. So it's consistent with some strategic directions that we're looking to do in terms of creating affordable housing And so therefore, we bring the DSAB into the mix, and their obligation is to build affordable housing, get it on the market within 2 years, or return it back to the municipality. And then we'll have to figure out the next steps with it there. So at a very high level, that's what happened there. And I think that takes us to the end of the sort of canned presentation we have, and happy to take any questions from here.
Thank you for that, Dave. Does anybody have any questions right now? Okay, we had some that have come up to us as been posted. The first one is, how does the city involve the community in the decision-making process regarding land sales and development? Are there opportunities for the public input or feedback on proposed projects?
So I think I'll try to take this one. In terms of the land sale process, once the city does get to a land sale, there is an opportunity for feedback. As I mentioned, there is a couple of week waiting period before council can finalize anything, and we do actually publish on our website and in print media whatever the city land sales are, so that people have the opportunity to get in touch with their counselor, speak to planning if they have an objection for some reason. They certainly have the ability to raise that, and any objections, comments that we receive are brought forward to council for consideration before any tax sale is finalized. In terms of development, I think that's a bit of a different situation. Development, we end up working through a zoning bylaw to make sure the development is in line with what the property is zoned for. But certainly in many of those processes, depending on where we are with site plan and different things, there are opportunities for neighbors or residents to comment and provide input, and that would sort of follow through what the Planning Act requires, if there is any requirement on a specific situation. So if someone's just building a house on their yard, there isn't a Planning Act requirement for notice. However, if someone is putting an addition that's gone through the committee of adjustment, then there may very well be a requirement to notify neighbors and receive comment back.
Okay, great, Dave. Thanks a lot. Another question that's come across. If the public can get a chance at a tax sale below minimum bid.
I can take this one. So no, legislatively, we are not allowed to accept a bid lower than the posted minimum bid in the tax sale process. So that's why we set the minimum bid. And then if there is a bid that comes in lower, it is deemed a rejected bid.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Natalie.
Mhm.
Okay, another question has come across. What infrastructure and services are available or planned for areas where the city-owned land is being sold? How does the city ensure that these services can accommodate future growth?
So most of the land sale that we've done is actually what you'd consider infill property, right? So the property, the tax sales that Natalie has spoken to, with a few exceptions, like some areas on the sort of south side of Porcupine Lake, where people have owned land for many years, and we often get those back from tax sales because it's really doesn't seem to be a developable area. You know, there is no real interest in those properties. So most of what you see that the city would be selling would be infill properties, part of the, you know, the current area. If someone is looking for, if there's a, now occasionally there's a, you know, the tax sales will include some portion of you know, forested land in the middle of nowhere that someone, you know, has owned, somebody's family has owned for 100 years, and they figured out that they don't want to be paying property tax on you know, on nothing that's useful. And that comes back to us. So not every piece of land that goes through the tax sale process is developable at all. I think I might have lost the narrative here, but what I'm trying to say is there's no obligation to make sure that it is developable. It's, you know, you sort of buy it at your own, at not your own risk, but depending on what somebody's looking to do with it. You know, people might be looking at a tax sale property, you know, as a renovation property that they'll move into or sell. Others are just trying to assemble land because it might be close to them, you know, where they've got rural property altogether.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. I understand that there's a few questions from the panel, and Carmen, I'm unable to see them. Are you able to see them?
Absolutely. So the first question we have, how would someone apply to complete a direct purchase of landlocked city-owned property?
You know, so land sales are done through our planning department. So what I would suggest, if there's a parcel of land that somebody's looking to purchase, that they, you know, identify the parcel as best they can. I mean, if they don't have all of the, you know, the entire PIN and all of that legal description, they can certainly identify it as best possible and contact our planning department. Dave St. Onge, who I think has done a couple of presentations with the chamber along the way, is our point person on city land sales. And you know, so he can talk to the individual, let them know if there's any reason why you know, how this might work, what the process is, and there are many parcels of land too that the city has to retain and can't sell because they might be important for drainage of, you know, drainage of lands or whatnot. But in any event, Dave has access to that info and would be certainly willing to work with anybody who brings in a request.
Thank you for that. The next question, and I know Dave, you had touched on this. What are the potential risks of buying a property at tax sale?
Well, I'll ask Natalie to jump in with me here. I think the risks right off are, number one, the city doesn't own it. We haven't inspected it. We can't guarantee the quality of the home, whether there's anything wrong with it structurally, mold, like any of that stuff. We haven't had an inside view of it. So it is certainly a buyer beware scenario. But there's probably other risk in that if there's something else that people should be thinking of.
That's usually what we tell people when they call. We don't know the state of the home, and you're buying it as is. But what we have encountered is there are some properties that go up for tax sale that have other liens on it. So if the property has a provincial or a federal lien, those are not removed. So the new owner would inherit those liens. So we always recommend that if you're thinking of putting a bid on a property, to contact a lawyer so that they do a lien search, just so that you're aware of what is on the property. Also, you're purchasing a home from an owner who usually doesn't want to be selling their home. So you have to deal with the current homeowner. And we have had instances where the current homeowner has squatted. Police have been involved, and the old homeowner has been evicted, but you may have to deal with that. And again, like Dave said, there's no home inspection. You don't have the ability to do a home inspection. So unfortunately, you're purchasing it as is. So vacant land is a little bit easier and there's less risk because there's no structure on it. But when there is a structure, those are the issues that you could potentially run into. That's all I can think of right now.
Thank you for that. There are no other questions. Maybe a last call for questions you can unmute or ask in the chat box before we wrap up.
I'd like to ask a question if it's possible.
Of course, please do.
So just getting back to what was of concern to me, was these properties selling at below market value and the public not having an opportunity. So I understand there's a process that has to be followed. Once that process has exhausted itself, the particular properties in question were then offered to exclusively at below market value. My question is there or should there be a process where that could be offered to the public as well?
Well, technically it was offered to the public when it went up for public tax sale, but there was a minimum bid attached to it at that time. So once we vested the property, that's when we did do a direct land sale to the DSUB. But we were of the opinion that there was an opportunity to bid on these properties at the time of tax sale, right?
Right, but you're missing my question. My question is, once we've gone through that process and you've determined that minimum bid has not been received, which is whatever amount of money, and now you're turning around and to say, okay, we're gonna sell it for less, and so you didn't give the public that opportunity. You gave it at a minimum bid, but then you exclusively gave that opportunity to one entity. And I'm asking is, can we have a process where we also, as a public, could have access to purchasing a property once all that process has gone through and it didn't work, that we can now have that same opportunity?
Yes, I believe we are doing that with the last property. Council didn't approve transferring the last property to the DSUB, and that's what we're doing. We're putting together an RFP, and you'll be able to bid on that property at that time. There'll be some criteria that we're setting to the RFP, but then at that point, you could put in a bid. And it's that vacant lot in Schumacher.
So is this going to be policy going forward that opportunity will be available? Or is that for just a particular property, Natalie? Are you just talking about a particular property, or are we talking about in general?
I'm talking about that particular property, but if council decides it wants to follow this process moving forward, then we will do that. And I would assume, I think there was a few emails to council after they did approve those properties to DSUB. Therefore, there might be a change in process, but it is also in their priorities to have affordable housing. So I think I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe Dave could better answer this question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Mark, I think it's a good question, and one that we don't have a solid answer for. I don't, council hasn't established a policy on this sort of thing. Frankly, we're trying to figure out how to structure the RFP for the Schumacher property. I think there is a bit of work that needs to be done here. We know that we need to develop housing and affordable housing within our community. There are many, delinquent or derelict lots or buildings that, we do need to, that would be great to get back on the market. And how we go about doing that is something we're still trying to work our way through to make sure that we can do this in a way that, isn't obviously a municipal bonusing situation, because Natalie and I both like to work at the City of Timmins and don't want to lose our jobs on something like that. But, is there a way to make it available to the private market, to like a private developer as well? So we're trying to stick handle our way through, through some of the stuff related to that. I think I'll be honest. I mean, I'm probably speaking out of turn here, which I shouldn't, but I think council would be interested in that if we can land it in a way that would make sense. You know, frankly, the first way of looking at it was, you know, was the DSAB is controlled by you know, by municipal governments, and that was the easy route. But we're working our way through this one, and if there's a way to make it available to the private market through an RFP process, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see council, you know, adopt a policy along those lines.
Thank you guys for the answer. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so, I mean, the best answer is like it's probably maybe, but we're not there yet. So, but council has heard from the residents, you know, from many people that there is an appetite for this, and so we'll try to get us there.
Thanks, Dave. Just Savvy, you had one last question. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. My apologies for being late. I've had the flu and been under the weather, and I almost didn't make it. So we've, for over 2 years, you know, been trying to develop two pretty substantial affordable housing projects, but they've been stuck in planning. And I'm not talking about that, just that we wanted to do it and couldn't. So we'd be very, you know, interested in that. And I was just wondering if the city maintains a list, you know, where if there's vacant land parcels where, you know, a medium to large scale affordable housing development to be done, you know, that we would be receive a mailing, you know. It's just that because I'm in Toronto, I don't get to always go to the city website and watch.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, I don't think we have an inventory published on infill properties. But I mean, you know, I think we should certainly look at that. We are right now looking at other pieces of land that the city owns. So we've got green space all over the community that isn't actual parkland, but is, you know, it's serviced area as well. So we'll be bringing some of that to council to take a look at to, you know, hopefully declare surplus and get it out there for public tender for development. So that's some work that we'll be doing over the next couple of months, you know, before the snow flies. We'll hope to have, you know, some of that information out there so that anyone who's looking to develop, and if we can free up some parcels of land, that, you know, hopefully we can work our way through an RFP process or a development process and see some construction in, you know, in the spring. So I would say, you know, stay tuned for that, but I will take a look to see if there's a way we can put together a list of our infill opportunities or city surplus lands that have already been declared surplus from the city, and actually have that posted publicly, because I don't think it is. And if that was your recommendation, I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as you know, we'd be anxious to do that, and you know, we've got the capital and availability to do that. We're just frustrated, you know, that we can't proceed. You know, like one of our developments, the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines has raised question marks about it. Although two engineers, including the former engineer of the Ministry of Development and Mines, has said that, look, you guys are out of your mind to be objecting to this, but they are, right? We can't proceed. So it's been over 2 years, Dave. You know, so if there was land that was ready to go, didn't have question marks, you know, it would be great.
Okay. Thanks. And I do understand some of the frustrations with Northern Development and Mines. Sometimes it's related to old mining hazards that, you know, maybe have been remedied 50 years ago and they haven't addressed it in their, you know, in their logs. So yeah, it certainly, you know, another one of those approval processes that just seem to be delay processes. So if there's something we can do on our end to work with you, though, you know, by all means, let us know, and and we can try to reach out as well for what that's worth.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And if you guys could create that list, that
Yeah.
would help the city and help developers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, everyone, I would like to thank everyone for joining this morning, taking time of your day. And a special thanks to Dave and Natalie for giving us your time and answering all these questions. Really appreciate it. The next meeting we have coming up is the on business building permits. It's a series, is a session planning, building and licensing. It's on October 3rd from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. You can mark that in your calendars and join us again at that time. So again, thank you very much for joining, everyone, and hope this clears up a lot of questions that you had. And if you have any suggestions for sessions the TSA can offer to our members, please reach out to our office at 268, it's score 705 268 3757, and we will make sure to try to have more meetings like this. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye.